Morning, guys. This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with another section of our Benny's Bats for today, Saturday, August 8th. The idea of the Benny's Bats section, we try to go over each pitcher that's on the mound today, figure out what that pitcher's weakness is, and then try to figure out which bats on the other team profile to do the best against them. We have a short slate tonight. I think there's only 9 or 10 games on the late slate. There's 5 games that are starting in the afternoon, but we're going to be concentrating on the 7 o'clock East Coast start games, the late slated games for DFS today. The first guy we're going to talk about is Eddie Butler. Eddie Butler's the pitcher for Colorado. Left-handed bats have hit .343 against him with 7 home runs and 34 innings pitched. Right-handed bats are hitting .291 against him with 5 home runs and 35 innings pitched. He goes up against the Washington Nationals today, and this could be a good situation to stack. When you have a pitcher who's bad against both left-handed and right-handed batters, it's usually a good spot to roll out 4 or 5 guys in a row if you're somebody who's looking to do that in a tournament. The 2 guys who stand out the most, obviously Bryce Harper's number 1 on that list. 480 WOBA, 351 ISO number. This is a great spot for him, and he should be in line to have a big game today. The second guy is Escobar. 354 WOBA, 110 ISO. So he's the other guy that stands out based on the numbers. You do have guys like Ryan Zimmerman, Jason Worth, and Anthony Rendon, who all came back off the DL as well. All 3 of those guys should be batting up in the top part of the order. And again, with all those guys going up against Butler, who struggles with guys from the right and left side, I think you can put almost all of those guys into play. The one guy who is definitely somebody who should be in your rosters, though, is Bryce Harper, who does have the best numbers here in this matchup. Next guy we can talk about is Adam Morgan. Morgan is a left-handed pitcher for the Phillies. He's going up against San Diego today, which isn't a particularly tough matchup. Right-handed bats are hitting .296 against him with 6 home runs and 29 innings pitched. The one guy who stands out based on the numbers and is really, really cheap all over the place is Jed Jorko. He has a 383 WOBA with a 179 ISO number. He's only 2,500 on DK at second base and third base eligibility. So I definitely think he's somebody that you can put into your roster. I'm also using him over on Fantasy Feud. On Fantasy Feud, he's only $39,000, which makes him one of the cheaper middle infield options that you can put in there, and allows you the extra money to spend up to get a stud like a Mike Trout or a Paul Goldschmidt or somebody who you might really, really want. I've been playing a lot over on Feud lately. They're the only ones who still basically have a qualifier left for their championship. DraftKings and FanDuel, I'm pretty sure, gave out all their seats last night, so I think the fields are set for those. Fantasy Aces baseball championship set their field on Tuesday, but Fantasy Feud still has about 12 or 13 seats left for their big $500,000 championship at the end of the season. So if you haven't gotten over there to start playing yet, that might be the place you want to take a look. If you're somebody who didn't get any big qualifying tickets this year and is still looking to, get that one really big score. Over at RotoCurve, we're actually offering a promo code. If you sign up over at Feud now, you get a 100% deposit bonus, and you're going to get $25 in additional funds coming in from RotoCurve if you use the promo code CURVE when you sign up. It's a great deal. The site's been doing really, really well. I like the way it's set up. They get the 3 starting pitchers. The salary pricing is a little bit different than what you're used to, so you really got to sit down and, kind of go through it all. It's not cookie cutter like a lot of the other sites are. It is definitely something, it's its own animal. It's something that you got to get used to playing. So get over there and start playing in some of those small tournaments now. They have satellites that can get you into the qualifier whenever they run it. And they run the qualifier at all different price points. So sometimes it's a $22 qualifier for the low bankroll. Sometimes it's a $500 qualifier for the guys with big bankrolls that want to take a shot at, making this $500,000 tourney. So they do have a little bit of everything over there for everybody. And I definitely think it's a site that you guys should check out if you haven't started on it yet. Let's see. Moving on from there, we're looking at a guy like Kavius Sampson. He's pitching for Cincinnati. He threw a gem in his first start. Went 6 innings, had 8 strikeouts, didn't give up a lot of hits, walks, or runs. He looked really, really good, the right-hander. He has a tougher matchup today going up against Arizona. There's a couple guys who really stand out. Wellington Castillo has been absolutely on fire. Hit another home run last night. That gives him 7 homers in his last 10 games. 429 WOBA, 314 ISO number from the catcher position, and he's actually discounted still on a lot of sites. This guy has been amazing lately. I've been using him a lot in the last 2 weeks, and he has really paid off. Again, I don't think you can really go away from him today. He's been that good. And again, he's not too expensive. So he's definitely someone you should look to get into some of your rosters. Paul Goldschmidt has actually been on a little bit of a slump lately. Didn't have a really good game yesterday. Went 3 for 3 the day before. But before that, he was 0 for 15 to start the month of August. But again, he's still a standout on the numbers. He's got a 410 WOBA, 221 ISO score. And, hits in that third spot, can drive in runs, can score some runs, has some power, can steal a base. I mean, again, he's one of those guys that we like basically across the board. Other guy on that team that you can look at is David Peralta. Peralta's got a 372 WOBA with a 233 ISO number. He had an RBI single yesterday. He's batting in the cleanup spot, splitting the righty-lefty difference between Goldschmidt and Castillo. So you can take those three guys. You get the 3, 4, 5 batter in that order going up against the right-handed rookie. And all three of those guys hit right-handed pitching well. So it could be a pretty sneaky middle part of the stack for you to use in a tournament on FanDuel where you can only get 4. Or even if you roll those 3 guys out over on DraftKings to then build the rest of your lineup around them. Let's see. We got Jeremy Guthrie going up today. Guthrie's one of the worst pitchers in the league over the last couple of years against left-handed batters. That means that you got to have a guy like Adam Eaton in play. He's on top of that order for Chicago. He's been hitting it a lot better. 361 WOBA, 177 ISO number, so I think you can look at him. You got Melky Cabrera, who's on a hot streak. He's 14 for his last 38. So he's a switch hitter that can hit from the right or left side, so I think he'll be batting lefty against Guthrie here, which makes him somebody that at the very least you have to consider. But that's about it for that team. Moving on to the Atlanta game, we got Mike Folty-Newitz. Left-handed bats are hitting 346 against him with 7 home runs and 30 innings pitched. And as we talked about, that Marlins team has a lot of pretty decent lefties that they can throw up at the top of the order against guys that struggle with left-handed batters that can do some damage. So my favorite play is Derek Dietrich. He's second or third base eligible, depending what site you're playing on. 376 is his WOBA, 253 is his ISO number, and his price is very cheap everywhere. So he's definitely one of those guys you can fit in. I think he's only like 45,000 over on Fantasy Feud. I know I had him in a couple of my qualifier lineups last night. Didn't have a huge night last night, but again, he's a guy that's pretty consistent. He'll get you a walk, he'll get you a hit here or there, and he does have the power to jack out a home run, which is something you don't see often from a guy who's second base eligible. At third base, obviously, there's a lot of guys that can do that, but if you can find them somewhere where you could put him in at second base, I think that might be the place you want to try to roll him out. Let's see. Christian Yelich has been 12 for his last 38. He's batting in a 3-hole now for that Marlins team, driving in some runs, getting some hits. So he's another guy I think you can look at. D. Gordon and Ichiro, if they're on top of that order, the left-handed bats, those are 2 more guys I think you can roll out there. D. Gordon, obviously, with the stolen base potential. Even Ichiro, too. Ichiro is very cheap. Gordon, you got to pay up a little bit for at second base. Again, you can't fit him and Dietrich in most lineups unless Dietrich's listed as a third baseman and you wanted to do that. But I think both of those guys are in play. One guy I wanted to caution against using is Justin Bour. Again, we know that he can hit right-handed pitching and the guy does have some power. But what I've been noticing lately is, he'll start against the righty, but he's been getting pitch hit for in the middle of the game. So you might only get 2 at-bats, maybe a third at-bat out of a guy like Bour. I don't think he has very good defensively, so I think that might be part of the reason why they're pitch hitting for. They're pitch hitting for him later on in the game too. They might be using defensive replacements, or obviously if a lefty comes in, he doesn't hit well lefty on lefty. But again, I've noticed that he is one of the first guys that gets pulled. They're doing a lot of double switches with Bour and a pitcher, and that just kills your roster if you're only going to get 2 or 3 at-bats out of a guy, especially if you take him at the first base position, which means that you're fading some big first base options every day, and he doesn't get you any kind of upside. Next guy we can look at is Willie Peralta. Peralta is bad against both sides of the plate. Left-handed bats are 302, 6 homers in 32 innings. Right-handed bats are also hitting 302 with 3 homers in 32 innings. So I don't really like this matchup for him at all. He's at home in Milwaukee, which is a hitter's park, and he's facing St. Louis, who's getting a park bump moving from St. Louis over to Milwaukee for this game. Randall Grichuk has been an absolute stud lately, a guy that we mention a lot here, a guy who's been on a lot of my rosters. 389 WOBA, 306 ISO number, hit another home run last night to help carry some rosters into the money. I mean, again, this guy's only 23 years old, and he's going to be a future stud if he keeps up what he's doing. He does have home run upside. He has been pretty hot, and he seems to be out of that 8 hole, which has been the biggest drawback with him. If he's hitting in the top part of the lineup, this guy is, obviously somebody you got to look at. His price has come up. He's no longer a min-price steal, but I mean, the way he's been playing, he's been paying it off even with a mid-level salary like he has now. Matt Carpenter, my boy, 380 WOBA, 212 ISO. Again, cash game play extraordinaire. I play him all the time in my cash games. The way he's been hitting for power, you can even look at him in some of these tournaments. He's in a good place to hit home runs in Milwaukee, and he's leading off, meaning he's going to get the maximum number of at-bats that he can. As the road team, they'll get that extra 9th inning, so he might even steal or eke out another at-bat. Again, I really, really like Carpenter. He's one of my favorite players in all of baseball. The guy's just so consistent, so solid, just so underrated that you tend to get him low-owned, and lately he's been winning, not only winning you your cash games, but he's been winning on some winning tournament rosters in the recent weeks with the way that he's been swinging a bat. So I definitely think he's another option you could look at. If you like a guy like Colton Wong, he could be in play too, batting third. Johnny Peralta, who's been batting fourth lately for them. And even Piscotty, who's, sometimes in the 2 hole if they put Gearchuk in the 5 spot. It all really depends on lineup placement. But I think all 5 of those guys could be in play, with Gearchuk and Carpenter being the 2 main ones that I would concentrate on. Let's see. Next guy we can talk about is Wade Miley. Miley struggled this year with right-handed bats. They're hitting 269 against them with 11 home runs. And there's a lot of guys who profile well against left-handed pitching on that Tigers team. You got James McCann, the catcher, who has some home run power, some home run upside. 437 WOBA, 271 ISO number, has been smashing left-handed pitching this year. So he's probably the top option that I would look at on that Tigers team. Jose Iglesias, who's been batting in the 2 hole lately. 401 WOBA, 128 ISO. So you're not going to get a lot of home run power out of him. But as a cheap shortstop option, if he's batting in the 2 hole, he's definitely somebody in a good spot today that could pick up a couple hits, score a couple runs, and return nice value for you at his really low price. Let's see, Nick Castellanos, 392 WOBA, 145 ISO. Again, another guy who's kind of cheap. He's been batting 5th lately, sometimes 6th for that Tigers team. Think he's another guy that we can look at here. We got Victor Martinez, 388, 125. Again, on FanDuel, where he's catcher eligible, or any other sites you're playing on where he might be catcher eligible, I definitely think he's somebody you can look at there. As a first base option, I just don't think he has a ton of power, so he's not somebody I try to put in my roster often. But again, if you're looking around the industry at him, his price is basically cheap anywhere. So if you're a big V-Mart fan and you want to roll him out in a solid matchup here, I think you can get a lot of upside by doing that. Next guy we can talk about, JD Martinez. He's got a 358 WOBA. 223 ISO, so he's the big home run hitter. He actually does better in righty-on-righty matchups, so I'm not overly excited about using him here, but I'm also not going to argue against anybody who wants to. It's not like his numbers are horrible. It's just, he's very good in righty-on-righty matchups, and that's where we usually see him do most of his damage. Next guy we can talk about on the other side of that game, Alfredo Simon. Left-handed bats are hitting 306 against him with 11 home runs and 66 innings pitched. One of my favorite plays today is actually David Ortiz. 391 WOBA against righties with a 275 ISO number. I feel like his price is down a little bit. I feel like people sleep on this guy. But, I mean, in a lefty-righty splits matchup, one thing he can still do is smash home runs. If Simon makes a mistake, which he has done a lot this year, giving up a home run every 6 innings, Ortiz is the guy who's most likely to take him yard. The only other lefty bat I really like a little bit on that Boston team is Alejandro De Aza. He has a 388 WOBA with a 196 ISO number. Again, he hits right-handed pitching very well. That's the one thing he does. That's the reason they brought him in there. And if he's up in the 2 spot in the order where he has been a lot recently, I think he's somebody else that we can roll out there with some certainty and some confidence. Let's see. We got Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray's been pretty good this year, but so has Cincinnati against left-handed pitching. You got a guy like Todd Frazier. Todd Frazier's numbers are sick. 408 WOBA. 398 ISO number. That's insane. So he's probably one of the guys who is in the best bet to get a home run today with a power number like that and the WOBA that high. Votto also has a high WOBA, 403 with a 160 ISO. And you have Marlon Byrd with a 384 WOBA and a 246 ISO. So like I said, they got a couple bats that do very well against left-handed pitching. So even though Ray has been very good this year, I don't think you can sleep on this Cincinnati offense. I know they disappointed last night. Everybody was expecting a lot more runs in that Cincinnati-Arizona game that ended 2-0. So maybe today is the day the Bats wake up and they get it together. Let's see. We got Tom Kohler. Kohler struggles with left-handed bats, 13 home runs and 62 innings pitched, although he does have a low batting average. I don't really like anybody on Atlanta. If I was going to take anybody, it'd be A.J. Pierzynski. He's been batting in the 3-hole lately. He's got a 353 WOBA, 164 ISO. We know he was hot earlier in the year. He can get into a home run every now and then. But again, I mean, A.J. Pierzynski is not a big-time hitter that, is a guy I'm going to be afraid of or, try to pitch around. And if he's one of the biggest bats they have in that Atlanta lineup, I mean, as much as I don't love Kohler as a play today, I also don't think I could recommend a lot of these Atlanta bats. Let's see. We got Ubaldo Jimenez. He's been much better at home, so this could be a tough game for him on the road. Right-handed bats have hit 276 against him with 6 home runs so far this year. So you got to look at a guy like Mike Trout, who's killing in righty-on-righty matchups. 427 WOBA, 314 ISO, so he has power. He's been getting on base. He can steal. He hit another home run last night. I mean, he's one of the best players in baseball. He doesn't need any, any more hype. The only thing I would say is his price is very expensive. He's probably the most expensive outfielder on every site today. So just keep that in mind. If you're putting him in, you're going to have to sacrifice elsewhere. If you think he's got the huge upside and you really need him, you get no arguments from me about it. The other guy is Albert Pujols, 375 WOBA, 274 ISO. Pujols has really, really cooled off lately. I mean, he was on fire. He was on a tear for a little while, and he's really come back down to earth. So I don't think I'm going to have too many shares of him today. And, when he starts hitting again, maybe I'll start putting him back in my lineups. But for now, I'm kind of staying away. There's only a couple other guys I want to mention. You got Irving Santana, 277 batting average to right-handed bats, 5 home runs and 20 innings pitched. The only guy that profiles well against righties is Michael Brantley, 376 WOBA, 165 ISO. You got Jeff Samardzija, 275 to left-handed bats, 11 home runs and 72 innings pitched. Eric Hosmer could be a good play to use there. 397 WOBA, 189 ISO. Basically the best left-handed bat against righties that they have on Kansas City currently. You got Trevor Bauer, 18 home runs allowed this year. He's going up against Miguel Sanu of the Twins. Sanu, 463. WOBA, 338 ISO. So just huge numbers in the righty-on-righty split. I think you can look at him today as a third base option. Let's see. Jamie Garcia, he's been really solid this year. I mean, I'm not looking to take a lot of guys against him. If I take anybody against a guy like Garcia, it's probably going to be Ryan Braun. 418 WOBA, 267 ISO against left-handed pitching. So this is a good matchup for him. We got Steven Strasburg making his return to the mound today, going up against Colorado. If you remember, before this guy went down, he was having some epic blowups. So I think you can look at some of those left-handed bats against him. A guy like Cargo, 429 WOBA, 320 ISO, hit another home run, had a couple hits. Big game yesterday for Cargo again. I mean, this guy's been on fire. He had a slow start to the year, and basically in the last month, has played so well that his numbers are basically back up to where we expect to see them. You also have Charlie Blackmon leading off over there, 381 WOBA, 196 ISO. He's got about 15 home runs, about 25 stolen bases. There's just a lot of ways that this guy can get you fantasy points. His price has come up, so he is expensive, but I think he's another good option you can consider. You also have Nolan Arenado. Arenado is righty-on-righty, but he's got a 383 WOBA with a 316 ISO. So, I mean, those are just some sick, phenomenal numbers that Arenado's been putting up, and you can't really argue with him. The other two guys that are left that we didn't talk about, not really targeting anybody against Garrett Richards today, not really targeting anybody against Tyson Ross today. But other than that, that's basically the breakdown of all the pitchers that are up on the mound. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. Make sure to come over to rotocurve.com and sign up for an account. This way you can start earning curve points for your participation. You can trade those in for money to play on the sites or RotoCurve hats or T-shirts, stuff like that. Tickets to a ball game. So there's a lot of reasons to get over there and join. You can follow the RotoCurve page on Twitter at RotoCurve. You can follow me, Benny Ricciardi, on Twitter at BennyR11. And as always, we thank you guys for joining us for your DFS research. And be classy, DFS.